Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines, and in this review I'm going to be looking at the Cubana Tupolev Tu-204-100 registered CU-T1701, which was the first release by ngmodels of the new Tupolev Tu-204 Mould, which I was able to review a sample of way back in April, or it seems like way back because it was only 4 or 5 months ago now. So super exciting for me to be able to get a Tu-204-100 scale, because it's not a model which I really expected to get released anytime soon. So that's super nice, and there's some really interesting liveries which I hope will be upcoming on the Mould. But in this review we'll take a look at this Cuban example and see what I think of the finished article. Now obviously I really like the samples, so I'm going to quite like this, but it'll be interesting to see if NG have been able to carry on through the quality of the samples through to the first release, and to take a look at the Mould fully clad with a livery and the window template and such. So before I get into the review, don't forget to check out my other channels, yesterdaysairlines.com, the website, which has written reviews and a huge amount of other material, about 400 scale, plus Facebook at yesterairlines, plus Instagram also at yesterairlines. Like and subscribe. Okay, cool. Now, for anyone who has not seen my video reviews before, the way these work is pretty simple. I split them into 3 separate components. Firstly, we look at the mould that's being used and score that out of 10. Then we look at the livery rendition, score that out of 10. And thirdly, we look at the printing and the quality control and score that out of 10. So the maximum score any model can get is 30. And that is the way the reviews work. So without further ado, let's get into looking at this new Tupolev Tu-204 mould. Okay, now obviously the Tu-204 has some basic similarities to a Boeing 757. They're both long, narrow bodies with high landing gear, and they've got vaguely similar profiles. Having said that, they do look quite different if you really know what you're looking at and spend any time watching aircraft, which surely most people watching this channel do. Here's a 757 released in the same month, the Delta one, and you can see that on the 75 the undercarriage is quite a bit shorter. Also that the nose profile on the Tu-204 is very different. Similarly, if you're looking at the wings, you can see that the Tu-204 actually has bigger wings and these very characteristic winglets, which look very different even to the winglet equipped 75s of later years. And the Soloviev PS90 engines on the Tu-204 likewise don't really bear any resemblance to the sort of thing you'd see on a modern Western airliner. They have a kind of vague passing resemblance, I guess, to an RB211, but only vague. So I think the Tu-204 does look quite different to a 757, and I think it's harsh to be calling it a 757 ski or whatever, suggesting the Russians kind of copied the 75, because, let's face it, most modern aircraft look very similar nowadays. Anyway, getting into the actual mould itself, and I have to say, like I did when I reviewed it, that I think that NG here have done a really excellent job. The general profile of the model here is excellent. If I can get this to focus, you can see that the nose shape is really nice. It looks just like a Tu-204, and the undercarriage is long and delicate and has some nice detail. They've also modified the shape of the nose gear doors here to make it more correctly square or rectangular. Previously those were tapering, and it looks really nice. If you move along the rest of the fuselage, you can see we've got the aerials, which as always with NG are well shaped and sized. We've got the big Russian Soloviev PS90 engines here, which hang very well off the wing, and I really like the way that the pylons joined to the engines here. I think that's really clean and nicely done. If we move through to the front of the frame, you can see that the engines are not transparent with see-through fans. That doesn't bother me at all. I think that they look really good with these fans as they are. It's quite difficult to see inside because they are so dark, but the fan detail is very good. And if we move further along to the back of the model here, you can see we've got this long, graceful rear main undercarriage with some quite impressive shaping and detailing going there on the gear legs. Likewise, if we come to the rear of the fuselage, big vertical stabilizer on, a big kind of squarish vertical stabilizer on the Tu-204 and a very tapered tail cone. So I think that they've got the details of the mould really accurate here. I can't really see any problems with this. There's some really nice, as you can see, flat detailing. If we move to the underside, it's got, again, really, really nice shaping going here of these areas join the wing fairings. And there's even, as you can see, barely, but it's there, detailing on the fuselage there, some scoops. Looks really nice, and I have to say that I think that this is pretty much a perfect mould in terms of its shape. I can't see any issues at all. Even the winglets here are well shaped, maybe not quite flat enough for the top, but not something that I'm going to be detracting points for. For me, this is a 10 out of 10 mould. It's a really, really good mould, and one, like I said, which I didn't really ever expect to see in 400 scale, but certainly I can't see any reason to be docking points off this one. It's a very, very, very good rendition of the Soviet era Tupolev. So 10 out of 10 for the mould for me. I think that's looking great. Okay, section 2 of the review takes a look at the livery, and it's probably a good point for me to talk a little bit about the Cubana Tu-204s. Cuba has obviously had some issues with the international community, especially the US, and so it struggles to acquire modern aircraft, and the Soviets and now the Russians are one of the few countries that has been willing to supply it with aircraft and not get in the way with sanctions. So it's not too surprising that Cubana has acquired some Tu-204s in the past. Their fleet is currently still based around IL-96s, and they've got some of those weird looking fat Antonovs, I think the AN-148 or something like that, as well. So they've got a whole variety of relatively obscure Russian airliners, and the Tu-204 is fits right amongst that batch. Now, they actually acquired 4 of these aircraft. The first one arrived in August 2007, and unsurprisingly, they were registered CU-T1700 to 704. A couple of them have been converted to freighters, and I think that at least one of those may still be in service. This aircraft is not. It was delivered on 30th December 2007, and it's been stored since at least 2016, and the last images I've seen of it, it looks pretty forlorn, sitting at Havana on the ramp with no engine pylons or engines. I think the chances of it flying again are incredibly limited. But nonetheless, it was seen at a variety of regional airports for quite a few years there. I've seen on airliners.net that the aircraft has been photographed at places like Caracas. It's been photographed in Mexico City. It's even got as far north as Canada, Toronto, I think, and Montreal. So the aircraft did travel a reasonable distance in service on probably some of Cubana's longer routes within the Americas. And so therefore, you know, that has probably elevated its profile amongst collectors somewhat, I'd have thought. Now, the livery is obviously very simple. Cubana dropped the cheat line, and even though nowadays they've got a kind of a blue belly on their their IL-96s, the Tu-204s never gained that, and instead we have what is effectively a Euro-white scheme with the striping on the tail, which was obviously, as you can see from the flag here, is taken from the Cuban flag. And when you look at the scheme here, I think NG have done it plenty of credit. I haven't got a problem with the dark blue or the red colours. I think they're both fine. When I look at the font of the main titles here, again, it is fine. They have added plenty of other detailing here, like the flag, like the aircraft titles, and like the little IFC logo. And I'm pretty sure IFC is the is the Russian financing company which leased them this particular frame. You can see on the engines we've got the logo, I assume that's probably Solovyev's logo, and on the wings, the winglets here have got their Cubana striping and logo too. So moving to the tail region here, again, nothing drastically wrong going on here. We've got the Rego in this interesting font which Cubana uses, and we've got the tail elements here in roughly the right place. And I say roughly because on this side of the tail it is reasonably roughly. If I move around to the starboard side of the aircraft, then you can actually see that it's a little bit more crisply done here, and there should be this white line that runs up the rear of the rudder. The red does not go right to the rear margin, and so on this side of the tail that has been correctly depicted, whereas on the other side it is not as good. It's kind of there, it's not as obvious, and when you get to the top it's basically gone. So I don't think that is correct. I'm going to dock a point there for that problem. So that itself is very minor really in the whole scheme of things. The rest of the scheme is looking good. So this is a 9 out of 10 for the livery rendition. So our third category is the printing and the quality control. I wax lyrical about ngmodels printing standards all the time, and this model illustrates it once again. Really classy printing. Look at those nice silver engine panel lines. Even at the nose, these are so fine, it's hard to get focused. Let me try. Look at the nose cone lines there. Nobody, or very few other manufacturers can print this kind of level of detail, and it really does look like the actual text is in the cut here panel there. It just is really, really crisp and beautifully done. And again, once you switch over to the bottom of the aircraft, look at the amount of detailing present there. There is a huge amount. Really, really fine and beautiful. So you can't argue with the printing. It's great. Everything's in the right place. There are no problems there. And as we saw earlier on, the engines have got a really nice dark color to them, which, you know, doesn't actually hide the fans, though it's hard to see on the video I'm in. So really good across the printing, no problems there from my perspective. Now, if we're looking at other factors, the build quality of this model, now it looks pretty great. Initially here, there's no real major concerns, but you do notice sometimes with this particular model that it does tend to tail sit slightly, in the sense like the engines, the nose gear is a little bit lifted. Actually can't get it to do it now, but I'm sure it's, there we go. So it's not perfect in terms of its, sitting on the nose always, and I'm not sure why that is. Most of the time it's okay. So it's a very minor issue, but I noticed it a little bit. It may just be because at times the surface is not 100% flat. So that's very small, but is potentially a very small thing there. And the other issue I noticed, which again, very small and just a minor quality issue here, is when you zoom in on the tail top here, you can see that there's a little bit of a nick. There we go, at the top of the tail, just where either the paint's been wet or it's struck something or it's rubbed against the cradle, I'm not sure. But either way, there's a little bit of a nick at the top. So two minor issues there, I'd say, which I will knock probably half a point off for each, to bring this down to a 9 out of 10 in terms of the build quality and the printing. So in summary, this is another really strong release by ngmodels. Really excited to be seeing more Tu-204s in the future. This is an attractive livery. It shows off the mould nicely with its simplicity, and it is a really beautiful model, which comes, as you can see, in an attractive box as always with NG. So another good quality release which is scoring highly. We've got a 10 for the mould, 9 for the livery, and 9 for build quality, so 28 out of 30. Used to be quite a high score. For NG, it's fairly standard, to be honest. It's a great model, and one that I hope sells well, because I do want to see more Tu-204s in the future. So I can highly recommend getting this. I think it looks like a great model. Obviously, it's a relatively recent aircraft. It's not a classic plane at all. Only came into service late 2007 and went out of service 2016, so it's only 5 years since it left service. And it's a shame that Cubana aren't flying all 4 of their Tu-204s around, because obviously there's plenty of life left in the airframe, but presumably spares are a problem. I'm not sure. But either way, great model, great release, and yeah. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video. So, I'll see you later on.